I'm Tim Wilcox. In recent days, the demonstrations have been more organised and peaceful, but the intense anger about the shooting dead of black teenager Michael Brown by a white police officer in Missouri remains. Thousands are already gathering for his funeral today. Among the mourners, a delegation from the White House. Among the speakers, the Reverend Al Sharpton, the civil rights activist. Michael's father has appealed for calm and a day of silence so he can lay his son to rest. Let's just take you live inside the Friendly Temple Missionary Baptist Church in St. Louis, Missouri. The service expected to start in about 10 or 15 minutes' time. Obama has sent 3 officials, including Broderick Johnson, who leads his race initiative, My Brother's Keeper. Among the speakers, also Al Sharpton, the civil rights activist. Let's go to our Missouri. Let's go to Missouri to our North America correspondent, Rajini Vaidyanathan, who is outside that temple now. Rajini.
Well, in the last 10 or 15 minutes, a sense of calm just swept over this street in Ferguson, which is where the church, where the service for Michael Brown is being held. And that's when the funeral cortege arrived. Now, throughout the morning, in the blistering heat, hundreds of people have been queuing up to secure a seat inside the church to pay their respects to Michael Brown. And I spoke to some of them as they were waiting earlier.
We don't know the Brown family, but our hearts empathize with them and the loss and the senseless violence that has taken place with this case, and we just want to show our support.
Justice be served, you know what I mean? Just do the investigation, do what they have to do, but definitely, you know, justice needs to be served for this.
Everybody is here to peacefully let him rest, and we are all here in support of the family of Michael Brown. I have to be here because I have to.
There's a real sense here in Ferguson that today is a day of remembrance. Not forgetting Michael Brown, but also not forgetting the cause that people took to the streets for more than 2 weeks for. And that is to raise the issue of what they say is police brutality and heavy-handedness. They say that a lot of young black men across America are unfairly targeted. Now, those events for 2 weeks now led to much unrest here on the streets of Ferguson. Police deployed tear gas. Protesters clashed with police on an almost nightly basis. And that included affecting the lives of ordinary people here as well. Schools were closed. They weren't able to go back after the summer holidays. And that did have an effect on some pupils here. And my colleague Franz Strasser spoke to some school children here in Ferguson to find out how it was for them.
This one here is going to the 2nd grade, and she was quite upset because she wanted to wear her new book bag and see her friends. I don't want to expose them to too much violence. We don't watch it on the news because I just don't want them to see people acting like that. It's not really a positive image.
The only way you break that is by teaching them right and wrong and letting them know what happened from the past so they won't repeat the same mistakes.
They need to know everything that's going on. I don't think we should sugarcoat it. I believe they should know everything that's going on.
People tell me, you would talk to kids about what's going on. I'm like, no, because kids need to be kids, you know. They got plenty of time for that when they're adults. They're 4 and 9. They don't need to go through all that, you know.
Today we had over 150 students come through, so many that we had to find a second space to start setting things up at.
It's something that he needs to see, and he needs to see how the system works and how it can work for you. We have the ability to do our constitutional right to protest, and he needs to see that process.
He's trying to make that scientist that's up there on the wall.
My 12-year-old is a special needs child, and for him, I think he needs that schooling a lot more than other kids. You know, he needs that all the time. And for him to miss going on 2 weeks of school, it's just kind of sad. And you don't know what to actually tell your kids, you know, this is not how I want you to live. This is not how I want it to be. We should all be as one, but it's just part of life. It's just part of life.
We would have conversations late at night. We would have to just so I can get an understanding of how he has felt, because I have been out protesting every night. It frightens them, but we still have to instill trust in them so that they can understand that this just happened to this individual. This doesn't necessarily mean that this is what the police are about or this is what our city is about. Well, he's asking me, why am I going out there? I'm out protesting in order so my kids don't have to go through this in the future, and so that they can feel equal, just as equal as everybody else.
So there are some of the views of teachers and pupils here in Ferguson and parents talking about how the unrest in the last few weeks has really affected the community here. Now, we're expecting the main funeral service to get underway in the next few minutes. As you said before, there'll be a range of speakers, including the civil rights activist Al Sharpton, local politicians and others, delivering memories and sermons. And we will keep you up to date with all of that here on BBC World News.
Rajini, for now, thank you very much indeed. Militants in Libya remain in control of the country's main international airport at Tripoli. An alliance of Islamist gunmen overran the airport on Sunday after weeks of fighting with a rival militia group. Meanwhile, a new army chief has been sworn in by Libya's House of Representatives to try and tackle the unrest. But the elected government holds little sway over the country. Parliament has had to convene in far eastern Tobruk because of violence in the main cities. Rana Jawad reports from Tripoli.
From one militia to another, Tripoli's now wrecked international airport has exchanged hands. This used to be the airport's main passenger terminal. Its charred remains a stark reminder of the destructive force of lawlessness and chaos. These men, part of an alliance of armed groups mainly from Libya's western city of Misrata, launched an attack on their rivals who had been controlling the airport for nearly 3 years. These unverified pictures appear to show the militiamen taking over it.
The rebels have defeated the Zintan brigades. They are out of the airport.
For most in the capital, this is no defeat, but rather another cycle of power-hungry militia violence that civilians ultimately paid the price for. The fighting has displaced thousands, many homes and livelihoods destroyed. 1,600 kilometers away from the capital, in the eastern city of Tobruk, Libya's newly elected parliament stepped up the rhetoric. In a statement on the weekend, they branded the alliance of Islamist-backed militias that overran the airport a terrorist organization. A spokesman for these militias said they didn't recognize the authorities. But this latest violence in Libyan cities is mainly being fueled by Libya's fractured politics, a climate of distrust among regions, cities and tribes, and the failure to disarm the militias after the 2011 war that toppled 42 years of Colonel Gaddafi's rule. Rana Jawad, BBC News, Tripoli.
Ukraine says its forces are fighting a column of tanks and armoured vehicles that have crossed into its territory from Russia. Spokesman for the Ukrainian military described the move as an attempt to open up a new front in the conflict. Officials said the column of up to 50 vehicles was heading towards the port city of Mariupol. It had been engaged in battle by border guards near the town of Novazovsk, 10 kilometres inside the border. Well, later in the programme we'll be discussing the pictures of Ukrainian prisoners of war that Germany's foreign minister says may depict a war crime. Liberia says one of the 3 doctors treated with another experimental drug, ZMapp, has died. The 2 Americans with Ebola who were given ZMapp recovered last week. Meanwhile, Japan says it'll provide an experimental drug to try to combat the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. It's an anti-influenza drug, which its manufacturer says may help because of similarities between the 2 viruses. The French government has resigned amid a row about ministers about austerity measures. The outgoing Prime Minister, Manuel Valls, has been asked by President Hollande to form a new administration by Tuesday. In recent days, there's been fierce infighting about economic strategy, with several senior ministers saying austerity was choking economic growth. The Israeli military has carried out a new round of airstrikes in Gaza as Palestinian militants continue to fire rockets and mortars into Israel. Palestinian officials say 2 people have been killed. Israel said it carried out 16 airstrikes, including attacks on 2 mosques. One, it said, was used to store weapons. The other was a meeting point for militants. Egyptian mediators reported to have now proposed a new ceasefire deal that would see Gaza's crossings opened. Let's just take you back to Ferguson in St. Louis, Missouri. Here you can see the Reverend Al Sharpton, who has just walked into the Friendly Temple Missionary Baptist Church. The civil rights activists due to address mourners during the service. President Obama also being represented by 3 officials, led by Broderick Johnson, the head of his My Brother's Keeper initiative. The state still divided, though, along racial lines. Some reports suggesting that the white policeman, Darren Wilson, friends have set up a fund for him which has already raised $400,000. You're watching Global. I'm Tim Wilcox. Stay with us still to